You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane, and it's bubbling over.
Hey there, welcome to this week's podcast. I am Josh Vietti. I'm here with Vincent Sierra, Pastor Tom Touchdown, Pastor Ron Vietti, and we're going to talk to you guys about spring cleaning. Out with the old, in with the new. I was cleaning out my garage the other day, and this thought occurred to me that there's so many things in here that used to have a place in our lives. There's toys that my kids used to play with. There's shoes that I used to wear that used to be comfortable or, in style or whatever. And I don't use those things anymore because they're out of season, right? And with serving God, I think that there's a lesson to be learned there, that so many times we get stuck because we're unwilling to let go of what's good in order to receive what's better. And it's funny because I on social media, you'll catch like business leaders talking about this stuff now, but it's a biblical concept. I was thinking about the story in Exodus with the children of Israel as they're wandering through the desert, and they got hungry and God gave them quail and manna. And the thing about the quail and manna is they had to eat it that day when he gave it, when it was fresh. Because if they waited a full day or waited until the next day, it was rotten. And the idea is that God wanted them to come to him regularly. I think about our lives and how, we all have a calling on our life. What if God would have given us marching orders and said, don't come back to me for 40 years? Right? I mean,
right.
That wouldn't be good, because he wouldn't be our father. We need to come to him all the time. And so I was thinking about our lives and how sometimes we need to do spring cleaning, right? We need to let go. We need to do kind of take inventory, right? And say, what is it in my life that was good, that had a place, right? But no longer does. And what is God asking me to let go of in order to receive something new?
Well, you and I were talking earlier, and I've taught for years. There's a verse in the Bible that says, from glory to glory, I'm changing you. And that means from good thing to better. It's really easy to let go of bad stuff to get good stuff, but it's not as easy to let go of good stuff to get better stuff.
Yeah.
And so what you said, Josh, is styles even change. I'm constantly going through that because I'm in front of the camera a lot, and I'm trying to think, man, what's in and what's out. I mean, years ago I was in this string tie season, where I wore string ties. Is that what you call them? The cowboy, they're
right.
Like bolo.
Yeah, that would be a better word. And so anyway, just as things change in regards to styles, things change in the spiritual world. The truth never changes, but the way we deliver that truth, the way we incorporate, technology, the way we communicate, all of that does change. I say things today that I probably shouldn't be saying that were appropriate for a few years ago, but they're not so much today.
Well, language changes, culture changes, right?
Right.
And some people don't realize it.
Yeah.
They just think, no, we need to keep the culture the same. We need to wear the same clothes. We need to do the same things. We need to say the same things. And they don't allow for, I think, positive change, or they don't allow for themselves to be able to speak the language.
Wasn't
of
the power of
current.
the sons of Issachar is they understood their generation. They had it down.
And each generation has a slightly different language, wouldn't you say?
I think my language is probably going to have to go into retirement at some point in time. I'm not speaking the language sometimes of this generation. But going back to your spring cleaning, baseball still on my mind. My wife's more of a pack rat. And so when I go into the garage to do spring cleaning, I go, hey, look, if we haven't used this in 2 or 3 years, we don't need it. Throw it away. But she's of the mindset that you never know when we're going to need it. And so I think there's spiritual application
here,
too. Well, the girls,
it's funny because the girls are around when we're doing this stuff. And I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, for those of you who don't know. And the 6-year-old all of a sudden loves that new thing when we're about to throw it away. She all of a sudden she develops this really strong bond to something she hasn't touched for 2 years. And I think that's human nature. I think that's what happens is we really, really do fight change.
Oh, we do. I want to say something to your older audience out there. I'm going through a change right now as far as, I'm handing a lot more stuff over in the ministry to the young guys, and I'm pulling out. Now, mind you, I've known, only thing I've known since I was 24 years of age is doing this work. But I want to say to you older people out there, I am just so enthused and excited about the changes in my life right now. I'm letting go of the old in order to get new. It's almost like I'm 72 and I'm going, what do I want to be when I grow up? I'm not sure yet.
Interesting.
And I think so many of us tend to think when we get older that we're to settle in, and we have this horrible idea that's been promoted by our culture. I'm to retire. I'm to go get an RV and go to the beach and play dominoes and whatever. I think sometimes we underrate the wisdom that we have from being this old. And so I say to our older audience, man, let's get with the program. God still has vision for us. I'm planning so much new vision right now. I'm getting tired just thinking about it.
I'm excited for you in this next phase too, because you're not leaving. You're not leaving the church. You're not leaving your position as teaching and all this stuff.
Right.
But what's cool is you are pulling back from the day to day a little bit in order to gain real true freedom.
Yes.
Right. And I don't think that playing dominoes on the beach is really freedom. Right. That's like another type of prison.
Yeah.
But I think that having the ability to do what God calls you to do in the moment, that's freedom.
Well, let me say something too. I don't want to put a guilt, thing on older people. There's nothing wrong with playing dominoes on the beach. Do it occasionally. But there's a reason for the season. In my sermon this last week, I talked about the fact that you have to keep your mind on the goal. The goal has to be there.
Well, Dr. Nalos, Peter Nalos, he's a heart surgeon here in town, and he's on our board. We talked yesterday before the board meeting, and he went out and bought a brand new electric mountain bike.
Yeah,
like full blown. This is like the bikes that these guys
extreme
race
mountain
on,
bike. Yeah,
and he's going up and down the trails and stuff. And I'm like, that's an adventure. That's so cool.
See,
you know.
See, when you're older,
So
you
neat.
have this natural inclination to start just getting into your comfort zone, not doing a lot. I don't want to be that person. And I told your mother the other day, I've got new adventures. I mean, I bought a bunch of tomahawks today. I won't even tell you why. I bought a bunch of knives today. I bought a gold panning dish. That's just for a hobby to get away from what I'm going to do. I'm letting go of some good stuff right now. And just in the last 24 hours, I've been asked to speak at some other churches. I've been asked to do a men's conference and da-da-da-da-da. And so when you let go of the some good things that God's telling you to let go of, he'll give you new exciting things. And so going back to the spring cleaning, I think we all need to do that in a spiritual way.
Yeah.
Every year too. We need to re-examine isn't it Socrates who said that an unexamined life isn't even worth living?
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because honestly, when we sometimes we powwow before the podcast, and so you guys know, we today's topic isn't if we veer off of it, it's going to be okay. We started there, but we want to kind of talk about what it really means to live our lives with God constantly in a fresh way, basically, right? So let me just let me think here. What I want to really get to is, how do you know when it's time to reevaluate? And what does it mean to actually examine? Like when we take communion, for example, Jesus says to examine yourself. Like you said, Socrates said it, but Jesus said it, right? He said, examine yourself as you partake in all that I am, right?
Yeah.
My body, my blood. As you see yourself in Jesus, you have to examine ourselves.
Yeah.
So what is it that you lay on the table? Is it literally everything? I mean, as far as Vince and I, we have families. We can't really sacrifice our families, but we can sacrifice the way we do things with our families, right?
Yeah.
We can sacrifice the way we raise our kids. We can sacrifice the way that we do ministry, our extra time, our extracurricular activities. We can sacrifice. There's so many things that we can
let
lay
me
down
answer
on
your
the
question. I want to get Vince and Tom in here, but I think it'd be, in the perfect world, it'd be great that if every year we could lay everything on the table and say, okay, what is still producing fruit and what isn't?
Yeah.
If it's not producing fruit, it needs to go. And then ask yourself a second question: what's wearing me out,
Yeah.
and what's not? Because if something's wearing you out constantly and continually, then that probably is not God's will for your life. Because in my walk with God over 50 years, I've seen that when he calls you and wants you to do something, he releases energy for that. And if there's no energy there, something's probably wrong.
And I think it's huge that, like you said, with season and producing fruit, because I think what happens is we get into a good season and we start producing fruit, right? We're talking about the Bible, and the Bible says a tree will produce good fruit. We get into the season and we're producing and we're producing and producing. And sometimes that season can be so good and the fruit's still coming
want to reproduce.
that you don't stop producing, that you're like, let's just keep this going. And that's when people, I think, get caught, is because they don't take the time, even in a season that you're producing. This is what we're talking about, giving up something good to get something better. Even in a season when you're doing amazing,
Well, think about
you still have to stop and self-examine.
Let's stop here for
Yeah.
a second. Think about the analogy itself, okay? The analogy of producing fruit. Have you ever seen a tree like struggling to produce? No.
I'm trying to produce fruit.
A tree produces fruit when the environment and the resources are there, right?
But at the end of the year, if that tree produces fruit and you don't pick the fruit all off the tree and you don't trim it back and you go through a season of pruning, next year you won't produce a bigger crop.
Right.
And so it's really, really important as you're going out and you talk about re-examining, that when you're doing a good thing, that you're willing to come back in and edit the thing you're doing, prune back the thing that you're doing, so that you can go to a better place the following year.
Well, let's go back to what you said, because from glory to glory is changing me. And the first glory is probably producing fruit, but the second glory is going to produce more fruit. And so we got to keep that in mind.
I have another good analogy when it comes to fruit, because we live in the San Joaquin Valley, and we have farmland all around us, and we have just gotten out of a historic drought. Right? I mean, we
are out.
We are finally out. We're finally out, and a lot of that just happened this year. So, but coming out of the drought, when we were in the drought, I would drive up the I-5 and I would see, and Tom, you're in the farming world, so you'll understand this. I would see groves of almond trees that were cut down, and they had to cut down the entire grove, right? Because there wasn't enough water to spread out
it's one of the most water needing plants out there.
Right. So the idea was they killed the entire grove so there'd be enough water for the other groves.
Right.
If they would have kept all of the groves, they all would have died.
They all would have died.
All of them.
Yep.
Right. And that goes along with this idea of sometimes in this life, and I think that it's a cultural problem, we try to hold on to so many different things. We try to juggle so many different things that ultimately everything will fall down.
Become a jack of all trades and a master in none.
I just came out of that.
Yeah.
Right? During COVID, I got burned out and I was juggling way too much stuff. I had a new baby. We were working like crazy. There was all this like pressure that I think I put on myself. But there was so much stuff going on that it just became too much. And I was like, well, I can't handle this.
Right.
I can't handle any of it.
Right.
And fortunately, God was there with a huge safety net. But at the end of the day, I think it's easy for us to get overwhelmed to the point where we're not even effective anymore.
Well, Josh, I mean, I think a lot of people will get paralyzed with change. I love change. I've always loved it, and I don't know why I love change. And there again, I think I'm always the odd man out here, because you guys all had a knowledge of Christ. I didn't. So when I got in, my first career for a decade was me. I was a bodybuilder. I was a commodity. My flesh was what I marketed.
You're He-Man.
That was one of the things.
Tom worked for Mattel, right?
Well, I worked for Mattel, a lot of things. But I'm just saying, I was self-employed, but I didn't even realize employed because I was having fun. I was living the Hollywood life. I was living but people, I think, get paralyzed when they start to realize that if I want to change, I'm going to have to get out of my comfort zone. I'm going to have to leave the normal. And a lot of people will say, there has to be a reason that drives you to change. And it can't, I think money's a very poor excuse to change. I made more money in my first 10 years of life than I'll ever see again in my rest of my life.
Right.
It will never happen again. But when I realized that what I was doing only had a short shelf life, I had to realize that it's a young man's game.
Well, it has to be vision, right?
I think vision starts before you get to the end of the next. And there again, I did the only thing my dad ever asked me to do was get an education. So I got a degree in computer science, which helped me when I wanted to leave bodybuilding. And then as I went into another profession, which I was in the IT, integrated technology, for the next 16 years, I wasn't saved. So it wasn't that I was a lack of money, I was a lack of a job, I was lack of material things. I had all that. And then as I came to a point, I realized that Christ was the answer. So as I came into that, I switched into another career, which I was not prepared for, and that's the ministry. Just turned 65 on Friday. And as I'm looking now at entering the ministry career in a year, I will be moving to Nashville, Tennessee, and I will be starting 2 brand new careers that I've been developed in, and you blessed me with one of them. Podcasting. So I don't know if you're ready for the change. I think you have to look for something new. And I think people get stuck, especially older people. They get stuck in what is familiar.
Can I give you a thought about you that I have seen? Something that I've just noticed out over the years, and something I really appreciate. You see yourself as a part of something much bigger.
Yes.
And I love that, because I think that a lot of times we think that we are the whole.
Yeah.
And I need to be the hero of my own story. And my story begins and ends with me. And I've seen that over the years. And I've seen, we see it in movies.
There's more supporting roles than there is starring roles.
Well, we're taught this in culture that we're all a hero of our own story. And I think young kids right now are feeling that pressure more than anything. I think we're going to have the most depression, by the way, ever, because these young kids
statistics are showing that.
Well, they're being taught that they are the hero of their own story, and that they're going to be great and they're going to be amazing without giving them the truth that it takes a lot of hard work.
Everybody gets a trophy, right?
Anyway, that's off topic. The point is, Tom, is that we are a part of God's story, and we are a blip in that story. But we're an important part. One time I was preaching years ago, and I did this thing where I had I forget what the number was. It wasn't that many people, but it was generation. Each person represented a generation since Jesus. And I had him kind of stand up front and interlock arms. And the picture, the word picture was, this is his story. And if any one of those links are broken, the story stops. But it's amazing to me when you think about it, that each generation has had leadership and has had people that have stepped up, and not even leaders, but people that have served, people that have been a part of the story.
Yeah.
They've had that part. And if they didn't do their part, the story would have ended.
But isn't it cool to see the multiple stories? I always go back to the Bible, and I look at Joshua and Caleb. They were on both sides of the story and had major roles in both sides of the stories. But as they go forward, and I think change takes risk, and so, and there's nothing more exciting than taking another risk. But there again, you're able to elevate to a new level. I mean, and that's why I don't think I've ever been afraid of a challenge.
Tom, one time I had a guy tell me, a very successful businessman, when I was very young, he said, "You're going to be successful in life." And I said, "What makes you think so?" He said, "Because you're not afraid to take risks." And he said, "You have to take them." But I'm going to go to something else here. It says in the Bible, where there's no vision, the people perish.
Yeah,
I do.
And now that doesn't pertain to, business vision or whatever. In fact, it's said better in Proverbs 29:18. It says, where there's no revelation, people cast off restraint. And so I think what happens is, this is talking about the fact that we got to hear from God. Revelation, you ask, how do we know our part? God gives us our part. See, he sees a total picture. We have this weird habit of looking at the snapshot and not the photo album, and not seeing where we fit in. God sees the whole puzzle,
right?
And he knows what he wants us to do. So I think it'd be smart if every year we'd go before God and say, okay, God, this is what I did last year. I want to bring everything before you again. What is bearing fruit? What isn't? What's tiring me out? What isn't? Vision. Let's say about something else about vision. What do you want your life to be like in the future? So many people live without goals. They have no destination in mind. Maybe we need to ask ourselves a question. What constitutes a successful life? When they put me in the box, which if God tarries, we're all going to go in the box. Have I succeeded at what God wants me to do? And again, I'm talking to older people too out there today. What are you doing that you believe God has told you to do? You got to do what God's told you to do till you die. And again, we've been, that's why I think Paul said, he said, don't be, conformed to this world, be transformed. I think it was Philip's version that says, don't be pressed in the world's mold. Somehow we get in our mind that we're supposed to go to 65, retire, go to the beach once a week or do whatever we do and get into a crocheting club. I'm just talking. But that's cultural. That's a cultural aspect. We are to do what God's told us to do until we die. Again, I got a green card. Well, it was in my wallet. It's not anymore. But it says Ron Vietti's allowed to be on this earth until his job is done. Then he has to go home. So what do we want to be when we grow up? What are our goals? For example, when we're in that box, what do we want people to say about us? Do we want to say things like, you know what? He took care of his family. He loved God with all of his heart, man. He was an example of God to me. Are we going to leave a legacy? And then short-term goals that aren't spiritual. Like one of my goals is to pay off a house. And I was able to do that this year. Raise godly kids and put them out in ministry. And I could go on and on and on.
I did a teaching or a talk. I think it was actually a podcast, but we talked about social media and how social media posts are going to be the history book of the future. Mm-hmm. So like the people that sit behind Facebook and just complain all the time, that's going to be what they're known for. Right. Mm-hmm. And so my hope and prayer is that the next generation smartens up with this and realizes that life is much more important than that you got to get involved in people's lives, yes. Like you guys do. Yesterday we had a board meeting. There's some men in there that you guys have had lifelong relationships with.
Lifelong.
And you guys have went to lunch, and you guys have went to Africa, and you've went to all these places around the world, Israel, all these places
with these guys.
Mexico. I remember sitting with you guys in Mexico, and we're right outside the villages, and we're talking to these people, and there's healings going on, all these things. Like that's what life is about, and when you're busy doing stuff like that, there's no point in sitting around and complaining. You know,
I was thinking the other day, just us four right here represent probably about 130 or 140 years of ministry experience.
Wild.
At this table right here.
So crazy.
That's awesome. Absolutely nuts.
Yeah, and there again, I mean, and I don't know about our audience, but if you're out there and maybe you aren't a believer, one of the things that I always kept in my life, and I think Warren Buffett put it correctly, he says there's three things I like to look for when I hire somebody. One is energy, the other one's intelligence, and the other was integrity. And he says that if you have neither of the first two but have integrity, I'll hire you. But if you have either the first two but no integrity, I won't hire you. And he says, if I hear that somebody's hired somebody without integrity, I pray that they're tired and they're stupid, because their energy and their intelligence will get us in trouble. Because people will create stuff. Right. But if you don't have integrity, and I think it doesn't matter how much you don't make or how much you do make, but I think if you can get through life with that intact, people will respect you. Yeah. Because how many people do we know, even in our profession as a ministry, who have went through 40 years of ministry without integrity, and all of a sudden it caught them?
You're talking about he was trying to decide who to hire and who not to hire. Did you hear about the guy that came in and said, I came in and heard Tommy quit, and Tommy quit, and I want to fulfill his vacancy. And they said he didn't leave a vacancy.
Wow.
He did nothing. Yeah, and terrible. So you're talking about he's looking for a way to get rid of them now if they don't have integrity.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if you can make it out with that, that's a legacy.
That's supposed to be a joke and nobody laughed.
No, I got it. I'm processing as everybody's talking.
Too, yeah.
And I'm also thinking about the next thing I'm going to say, because I don't want to be, the side that happens.
That's a podcast, by the way. If we jump on and we talk over each other, well, Vince and I, that's how we normally talk. But
we talk over each other on purpose.
Yeah.
It's not by accident. Say, look at these guys, how rude they are. We want to keep this thing going and alive. And we thought from the beginning, talk over one another. Let's keep this thing going.
If there's 3 seconds of silence in a podcast, it's a big deal.
It is.
It's funny.
Especially of your life.
It's our style. It's what we do.
I was just more, when I said wow, I was just more shocked the guy didn't do anything for his job, and they let him stay there that long.
Let me be the one to get back on topic here. Tom, talking about integrity, I think of the word integral, which is similar, right? And I think that integrity is focusing on what's important.
Yes.
And staying focused on what's important.
And doing the right thing when no one's looking.
Yeah, well, doing the right thing for God and for the people, right? Yeah. And that's just it. I mean, gosh, it's there's so many people that we've met over the years that seem like they're polished. They seem like they have their head on straight. They seem like they want what's best, and they say the right things. They look the part. But ultimately, you learn people's motives eventually when you live with them.
And don't they leave the biggest dent maybe in society? Or maybe in the business. I mean, we've had the church, and how many times have people done something and reflected back on us?
Yeah.
Integrity too comes from integer, right?
Right.
That's a whole number. That's a thing complete in itself. You don't see many people with integrity today. You don't see a lot anyway, not the majority. And I think integrity also is what you see on the, what you hear from me is what I live. I am what I say.
What do they say? It's doing the right thing when no one's watching.
That's it.
Well, this generation too, I think that they've showed the best of on, like you talked about, on social media.
All right.
And when they mess up, they've tried to hide it. And I think that's gone against them as far as the integrity. But I'm not saying all people, but I'm just saying in general. And I think that's where people try to live through that filter. You talked about filters on Easter. People try to use that as the filter and try to hide everything. But people of integrity aren't perfect. They're people that are willing to cough up to the thing that they've done and then be able to move forward out of that and grow. And that's part of even having bigger vision,
Right.
is growing out of the things that are hard and the mistakes that you make and the things that you do.
How many times have you heard the advice, our generation, fake it till you make it?
Yeah.
Right.
And I
would
think,
say,
yeah.
well, I would say instead of fake it till you make it, be it until it is. Right.
Oh, that's good.
Well, Josh,
That's good. You need to write that down.
Sometimes
You'll
moving
forget
from one thing to the next doesn't always mean you're going to get paid more. You're going to have the same
Right.
vision. When I came in the ministry, I took a 2/3 salary cut. My wife had to go back to working. So a lot of people will say, well, that's a failure. Well, it's not a failure. It's doing the right thing. It's following what God has as calling for our life. And then you can go back and you can track it from that point and see that that was a part of it. So if you're out there and you're saying, hey, I'm going to go up a rung on the ladder every time, you're not going to do that.
So I'm gonna try to use my mind and maybe my spiritual sense and think about what people are thinking about that are listening to this right now.
Okay.
And I think one of the questions that they might have is, how do you know what's right and what's wrong? Because sometimes it can be complicated. Sometimes
How it's right or wrong in relationship
vision.
to what?
Like what you're supposed to be doing.
let me say this. How can you hear
Okay.
God and know that you're doing the right thing?
Let me throw a curve at you. Is it too narrow-minded to have most all things we do somehow contribute to the big picture of what we want to be and accomplish on this earth? Let me use an example to kind of make this more clear. One time an older pastor told me, he said, you know what? He said, do what you do well. We were trying to run a school at that time and we weren't doing a real good job. And he says, God called you to do that. Do what you do well. You win people to Christ well. You do a church well. And there was another point in time that I told the church, I said, let's think about everything we do. Is it contributing to the large picture of who we want to be? For example, when we do our spring cleaning, spiritually speaking, lay everything out on the table. Do we look at it and go, okay, this, and this, and this contributes to what my life purpose is about?
Mm-hmm.
This and this really doesn't contribute. For example, I go on vacation. Vacation is for a purpose. There's a goal in it.
Right.
It's to rest up so I can come back to doing what God's called me to do.
So let me stop you there.
Okay.
You said there's 3 things that would work, right? And that's the problem.
Right.
Like it's the things that don't line up with your vision.
Right.
It's easy to spot those sometimes, right?
Right.
But it's not so easy to spot the best of the 3. Like, which one do you start with, or which one do you go with out of
Well,
the
then going
3
back to what I
good
said earlier,
things?
what is still anointed? What's not tiring
Right.
you out? What's bearing fruit?
Right.
You got to bring
No,
all that
that's
into the
good.
picture.
Vince
That's
always
really good.
says the lowest hanging fruit. You go
Yeah.
for it. Yeah.
Right. Because I think for a lot of people, it's like, go for the thing that's the easy. It's right in front of you. You know
Yeah.
you can nail it down. I think people, when they think about vision, and I want to go back to that for a second. When they think about vision, they get way out in the cloud. You've seen this, Pastor, with people. They get way out
You're
here.
talking about me.
Maybe sometimes. I'm talking about myself, but they get way out there.
I'm an overthinker.
And then there's
so-
there's a thing that's right in front of them. It's
Yeah.
like, if you just start there,
right.
that's where you should
So
start.
the
Go back
reason
to the
it's so
verse. Go back
easy.
to the verse. Without a vision, people scatter.
Yeah.
Right.
The reason, so I am bringing up a dysfunction of mine because I think it's shared with some other people. I've talked to other people and
Right.
they say that's me too. I overthink things. And so I will take one thing and say, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this?
It's
And
not
I'm-
that you overthink it, and I'm not talking just but to everybody. It's sometimes you think that the little thing doesn't have as much meaning as the big thing. You're
Well,
looking
I've
at the vision, you're
learned-
like, this little thing is beyond what I really want to do. But really, if you get back to the little thing, if you do the little thing,
Right.
it will prepare you for the big
I
thing. and
quoted
that's
the
important.
verse yesterday.
Right.
Don't despise small things.
Right.
Right.
And that's huge. That was one of the notes I took. I was like, the small things are where people
Let me just say,
don't want to dig.
let me say this. I have learned a lot this year in how to minimize my thoughts. And one of the things that I learned, that's probably the most important thing that I've learned, is to be mindful, to be here, to be where you're at. I learned through therapy, through other things that mind wandering Okay, so that would be worry about the past or worry about the future or even thinking about how is this going to be done is directly connected to unhappiness.
I like that.
Mind wandering is directly connected to unhappiness. So instead, be here right now.
Well, we all have to work in the present. You're never going to get away from that.
That's right.
Even if you get vision, you still got to work today with what you know.
Well, so
till it brings. Yeah, you know, as you look out there and somebody's saying, "I want to get where I'm gonna podcast pump here real quick," because it fits in with the podcast we did on the Off the Mountain, Hearing God's Voice.
Yeah.
It fits in with the podcast values.
Yep.
And so you know, so if you want to go out there and rewatch those, I think we take a deeper dive on those. But I think all those are little baby steps because the how is still going to be there. The how is serving God day to day, writing down the confirmations that we all get that keep leading. It's like the breadcrumbs. You know, I yesterday morning I got a text for somebody that you would think they were in my dream, and they were giving me the view from the opposite side, which was really crazy because I got a text. I haven't talked to Blaze Bookout for at least 6 years. So Blaze, if you're listening,
hey Blaze,
yeah. I mean, it was such a crazy, and I was like, you were in my dream. But he was telling me something that was affecting him. You have to listen. Like, those are the small things. You know, you have to be able to spiritually apprise those little things and the things that you may even not know are spiritual.
And it's not just marching orders. It's also appreciating the wins.
Yes.
You taught me that.
Yeah.
Appreciate the wins.
Yeah.
Appreciate it when things go well.
Yeah. Even if it's small, I think you have to appreciate it. And the other thing I was going to say is I think a lot of times we get a vision, we get a thing that we want to do for life. And we try to rush it by throwing I love that you said breadcrumbs because we try to create our own breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
And that's also a dangerous place to be.
It is. You can't do it.
You can't rush. I mean, think you brought up early in the podcast about the children walking around for Israel walking around for 40 years. Israel walking around for 40 years. You can't rush that process. And that's huge because you might see this big thing. You might think, but you can't put the construct of time on it and say, well, I got to get here and I'm going to rush it. And because you're going to force something that God has created that's supposed to be good for you. And you're going to ruin it by trying to get there without waiting for what God has for you. Like you said, being present now.
You know, you guys probably have a lot to say about this, but I think what God was doing while the children of Israel were wandering the desert was he was changing an entire mentality. They were slaves before. That's all they knew. They only knew how to be yelled at. They only knew how to be controlled. They only knew how to be motivated by fear. They only knew that. That's the life
Josh,
they knew.
How many times they say, let's go back to Egypt because the leaks and
a lot easier.
That was provided for us.
And he had to give them
there.
choice, Josh, because they had to choose. Because if he just would have taken them just to the next thing and said, "Oh, now," they would have ruined it.
Well, I love the fact that he gives them choice after choice after choice after choice because they keep reverting back, right?
You know, and I look at this, and I may be wrong. Pastor can tell me, but I think it was a lot about character. I think even the last thing for Moses was speak to the rock. I know we've told you twice before, hit the rock. But now I want you to be more controlled, and you should have learned self-control by now. Speak to the rock. He goes out and hits it, and I think God's like, well, I'm gonna let you see it now, but you aren't going in.
That's a great point, Tom. God works with us based on what He's already taught us, and so it's not like He's going to give you baby food when you're 18 years old. You know what I mean?
In that story, I love that story because God says you're ruining a whole word picture I'm trying to get to my people,
right?
And it'll be in the future have to do with crucifying Christ, and so it was a big thing.
Something
I've taught
he didn't
him that
even
before.
understand.
He didn't even understand,
which is wild.
But you said, Josh, choice after choice, they kept reverting back. They kept going back, and what I think happens very often is we in this generation do a very great job overcomplicating life. We just overcomplicate it. God has a purpose for us. We got it. One of the elementary things you need to do when you become a Christian is see that purpose that He has for you. And then from there, you work backwards. See, the Christian life is not static. It wasn't made to be static. It's not alive while you're younger and in ministry before you retire. It never gets static. It stays alive all the way till the day you die. And so it is easy to revert back to what you knew before. Like Tom said, with older people, it's easier. You're getting tired because your energy level goes down and you don't have it. So you go, it's easier just to sit here in this chair and do the easy thing. What you don't know, if you'll get up and go forward, God will give you new enthusiasm.
Isn't that right, Pastor? Because you
new
know,
energy.
you and I have talked about many a times. You have to use your faith through your entire
Your
life.
life.
You're even using your faith when you're dying because you're believing in eternity.
One thing
I don't think you get out of that.
One thing I've learned is that focus is a way to basically hold on to your energy. Like it's a way to if you're unfocused, you're spending so much time wasting thinking about all these other things you don't need to think about, right? You're wasting time thinking about things that don't matter. But when you're focused, you're actually honing your energy into a certain direction.
You have to have something to focus on it.
Right.
And there's the big purpose. Then there's a lot of little goals. Little goals. You know, the little goals keep me alive.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we will talk about that later. But we've got to find our purpose in life. And again, if older people would only know, yes, it's easier to go back, revert back. It's easy to get in that big chair and, watch reruns of Bonanza or whatever you watch every day and get in a real bad rhythm. And a lot of people say, well, at this age, I just don't have the energy. God gives divine energy when you start moving toward a purpose.
Yeah.
So you have no excuse for sitting there, but find something. If you're older people, I know I'm getting there. I know your energy levels, they kind of start burning out. And you get a little more maybe arthritis than you had before, and you want to slow down. And slowing down's fine. Just don't quit. And so know that motion creates emotion. If you will find a purpose and say, I'm going to fulfill this till the day I die, God will supernaturally give you more energy than you have
I'll ask you a
otherwise.
silly question real quick. A silly question. Is it better to do 1,000 things a day or three of the things that you're supposed
Obviously,
to do? The three right
things you're
things,
supposed to do.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If
No, it's
you
huge.
young people, I hear people tell, well, I'm burning out. If you're burning out, you're living wrong. Because that means you're doing a lot of stuff God has not called you to do.
Yeah.
He will give you the energy to do everything He's called you to do.
That's true.
So I get sick and tired of hearing this. I'm burned out. Well, if you burned out, you're sinning. You need to go back before God and see what you're doing.
good.
And you're not supposed to do.
That's
Yeah.
where I was. I mean, I was taking on a lot of things that I didn't have to take on.
But I think God will give you the energy and time to take on the things. But then in taking on those times, you also need that rest.
Well, you know what you need to, as you go through ministry, and I think Pastor Ron and I are seeing a little bit of this, is because if you do run out of energy, he'll pair you up with somebody who has
for sure.
energy, right? It's like sometimes the Bible says that old men have.
They dream. They don't have vision anymore. They dream.
And so you can have something, but I think sometimes you mistake your role.
Yeah.
I definitely don't have the same level that I did 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
No way.
And so, but as we get to partner with you two young guys.
Yeah.
And you guys are 40, so you may not think you're 30, but I'm just saying, we get to draft in off of that energy,
Right.
or the fact that you're able to do things, and we're able to draft in off of that, but we don't have to have the lead anymore.
Well, and I was joking too. Old men do have visions, but I'm just saying the dreaming part is really
Right.
funny the way we phrase that in the past.
Well, whether you're young or old, and arguably Vince and I are middle. We're in the middle of age,
Right.
So no matter what your age is, we're all part of the big story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, is that in 1,000 years, we'll be sitting around the table laughing about this, saying we didn't know anything. back
Well,
then,
but
you
now
know?
Pastor said it. How do you leave a legacy? Just like that. Pass something on to now you guys are getting the baton. So that's the legacy, is being able to sustain it and then pass it on.
Age is only defined on the things that you've learned when you arrive at that age. So it's like, I don't see myself like, oh, you're 40 years old. I can't do some of the physical things I used to be able to do. But I do feel like your dad, what he said, I loved what he said. That's why I smiled earlier. He's like, well, what am I going to do when I grow up? Because I really feel like the door's wide open. I don't feel
Wide
like
open.
age is keeping me from doing whatever I want to do.
My big future's still ahead
But
of me.
I want to go back to this because I think part of our purpose, and this sounds really, but I want to explain it, is that there is some suffering in your purpose, and that you have to suffer for some of that purpose. For example, would you be your 30-year-old self, Pastor? Would your 30-year-old self be able to do what you do now?
Absolutely not. Because he didn't have the wisdom and the knowledge and the experience.
And he didn't have the shaping, right? You went
Right.
through things that people you went through hard times, and you survived some stuff, and you've had a lot of life lessons that prepared you for this moment now. And I think for us, we get in this moment where, like, when things get hard and they get tough, and the suffering comes through, right? We talked about this in another podcast, but when that suffering comes through, we're not willing to endure to realize that when we get to that thing, we'll be ready for it. Because
The
I know
suffering's all for
my
purpose.
20-year-old self would not be ready for this moment.
I wished I had my wisdom and had a 30-year-old body.
Well, think about this. Think about this
Yes.
analogy that I used earlier. The young man does 1,000 things a day because he doesn't know the 3 right things to
Right.
do. So that's how he learns, right? Is he does is it's trial and error. It's qualitative, right?
Right.
I like
or
what God-
quantitative.
I
Sorry.
like what God told, I believe, Ananias when he had to go pray for Paul. He said that because Paul had done a lot in his life, but he says, go back and I want you to tell him how much he has to suffer for me.
But
He-
didn't deter Paul at all.
Not at all.
That doesn't matter.
But
Doesn't matter.
but I'm just saying, sometimes you think you come to the point where I can't handle anymore. Well, yeah, you go through it.
The truth is, like when Josh said his 6-year-old was afraid to let go of that thing because it's hard, and letting go of that thing is part of that shaping. It's like you got to let it go so that you're able to let God do something new and leave room for something new to come in.
It's like the guy again on the trapeze. He can't grab the other bar coming his way if he doesn't let go of this one.
Yep.
And I've just seen the last 72 hours, by releasing some things, God's already bringing some new things into my life.
It's funny, Romy, my 3-year-old, we put her rocking chair on let go, right? And someone came and picked it up, and she just lost her little mind. She's never going to be rocked in that chair again. And the funny thing about it is she didn't want to be rocked at that point.
Right.
She didn't want to be coddled anymore.
Right.
She'd already grown past that. But the idea of not being able to go backwards, like that was a big deal to her. That's a huge lesson for me. Like,
I'm going through it right now. I'm giving up a lot of stuff in the church, a lot of the business a lot of the running the stuff. And even though I hate doing it, I don't want to let it go.
yeah,
That doesn't make sense, does it?
it doesn't.
I hate doing it. It's wearing me out. It's too much for me. But still, there's that thing of, like Romy with a rocking chair.
The irony in it is that has been security, but it's only been security because you stepped out,
Yes.
right? Like it wouldn't have been your security unless you stepped out. And I think that's the exciting thing that we have in front of us is we're like, okay, well, we have no idea how this is going to work.
Yeah.
No idea. Like we talked about yesterday, we were in a meeting and we talked about future, and I'm like, 5 years? I have no idea what's going to happen in 5 years. But I know that this year,
Well, you guys have a
We're
challenge.
focused
a
in a
lot of
certain
people don't
direction.
see the business side of a ministry, but you've just been now given a multi-million-dollar industry or machine, and that unfortunately that's what it takes to keep it going. And
we're
people
just
are
honestly,
good to give, and
we're-
that's your
we're
responsibility.
We're serving in the capacity that we
Yes.
feel we can, and we're supposed to for the time being, and that's it. That's all you can do.
But the little things, that's huge because what you can do is be like we talked about, be present, know there's a vision moving forward, but nail out the things that are day to day, and those things are important. And that stuff will lead to
But then
big
again,
stuff.
one of the reasons I am not too hesitant in giving it up is because I know where the source of everything comes from. It comes from God. And I want to say to all you people listening that might go to our church, your giving means everything in the world to us. To have a ministry that went from a Quonset hut, which I want to do something, and I wish somebody would encourage me because my wife certainly isn't. But I want to go back and I want to build an old Quonset hut on our property. The one we started the church in the beginning. Maybe we could even do this in a technological way. But I want to show people, I want them to have a vision. I want them to see a picture. This Quonset hut would look like, an old Quonset hut that would probably seat 25 people. It has a tripod, or what do you call them? Tripod. What do you call it? Easel. And it has 3 songs up there on the stage. They're written on cardboard with a felt pen. And it has a music stand for a pulpit. And it has some, bar stools in there as chairs. It has some high-rise bar stools, some low ones, some lawn chairs, about 20 of them. And it has a little curtain that separates the storage room from the rest of the Quonset hut where we kept kids at. We made it into a nursery. And I want them to see that picture, and then I want them to compare it to a 3,400 seat sanctuary. And I wanted to show them that God did that. And so one of my confidences right now is that God, who did all of this, he did it. I was just showing up. That same God will show up for you guys as you take this responsibility. But I do want to say, all the people that are giving, man, we have never got up, or very rarely, if ever, begged for money, begged for finances, nothing. We've got up and done what God's told us to do, and then automatically the people of God have the desire in their heart to give.
And we're talking about the church right now.
But our church. But it makes me pinch myself sometimes to go. And unfortunately, it has got to a place that it takes several $1 million a year to run this place, which we never intended on that. Some of you listening going, that's the problem with church. It turns into a big business. We never intended for that to happen. We're just preaching the gospel, looked around, and there was thousands of people needed a seat. They needed a chair. They needed an auditorium. But we didn't set out to do that. But nevertheless, it has become that.
Well, churches, if you are a part of a church, there should be a level of ownership for you.
Yes.
I mean, you
Yes.
are part of that church. You're going to be accountable to that
And
church.
everyone
just
who
like
gives even a little
rest of
bit,
us,
gives
yeah.
$30 a month, it's just, it means so much to us because we have to trust God
Yeah.
to do what we can't do.
Yeah.
I said in my sermon yesterday, or 2 days ago, I said it that, you know what, our duty in so many things is just to show up,
Mm.
say what he
Yeah.
says to say, do what he says to do,
Yeah.
and then he has to make it grow and he has to make it work. We can't do that. God does the hard work, but he lets us be a part. It's almost like he has this big business. He says, you know what, I really don't have to have you guys, but I want you to be a part of what I'm doing because you're my family. Does that make any sense, or am I rambling?
No.
No,
It
yeah.
does.
Am I rambling?
And you know
No,
what you-
I like that you said to talk about showing up because a lot of us, we just don't show up. And that was a big part of what, you can't expect anything if you just don't, if
Well,
you don't put each shoe on and say, I'm here.
Well, Pastor, and I think the analogy you used with the Quonset hut to the sanctuary is a very vital one because the only thing you kept doing that was consistent was showing up in the Quonset hut,
Yeah.
showing up at Monterey and King. I wasn't there. Showing up at the next location, showing up at 2300 East Running Chain. You kept showing up. And I love it, the fact that you said you can't do it. I had something happen to me when I was young, and I was very successful in bodybuilding. And the president of Gold's Gym Enterprises, Pete Grimkowski, had a belt buckle made for me. It said Mr. America and my name on it. And he goes, Tom, all you have to do is put the date on. And I thought about that, and I placed runner-up in 1986. And I never did that. But if I would have tried to keep chasing that, I would still be chasing that. I'd still be chasing that to this day because that wasn't my journey. And I was the one that had to realize it. When other people were pushing me towards a goal, I had to realize that goal for me is unachievable.
Let me ask you a question and make a
That's
comment.
funny.
Was it God's will that you became Mr. California?
I do believe looking back, yes.
I agree.
I do
agree.
agree looking back, yes.
Because you have influence today that you would
Yeah.
not have had without that.
And I think if I would have still kept chasing that belt buckle that he had made for me. I remember one time he goes, "Do you want it?" And I go, "Why would I want it? I never earned it." But I was just like, but my career was coming to an end because I didn't have it in me. And if I'd have kept chasing that, if you're out there chasing something and you just in your heart you know it's not going to happen, you got to get off that
But
track.
see, I wanted to be
That's
what
good.
you were. I wanted to be. I wanted the 20-inch arms. I wanted all that, but I just didn't have the DNA to do it. So I wanted what you had, but it wasn't in God's plan for me. It wasn't God's plan for you because there's people today that you have influence with that you would not have had influence with. Am I safe to say if it wasn't for your past?
Well, I'm laughing here because I just read I had this notebook that I wrote notes in years ago, and my daughter took it from me, and so she doodles in it. It was in her room, and I was in her room today, and I picked it up, and I was looking through it. I was like, oh, there's some old notes. In my note, it talks about the danger of following the crowd. The crowd tells you, crowd will tell you what they want to do. But then in my notes, I also put crowds are stupid. And if you think about
That's
it, if you
nice.
go, no, but think about it. If you go to a Dodger game, right? Or you go to like, what are the crowds doing? They're all throwing, they're doing
Yeah.
the wave. They're throwing beach
They're having
balls.
fun, man.
Yeah,
Why
but
are they stupid?
But have you ever
I
had
got
an
it.
intelligent conversation with a crowd?
I saw a guy.
And would you ask the crowd, hey, what should I do with my life? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. But the individual is intelligent, and especially when the individual is Jesus. That's my point.
I saw
I agree with
it's
you.
a good point. I saw a guy on Instagram stories he put a straw inside of his hot dog at a Dodger game and then put it in his beer and drank his beer through the hot dog.
That's what I'm saying.
And everybody was just sitting there like, what is he doing?
Hey,
why?
But yeah,
Why?
It's
the crowd
mentality.
The crowd is
when
wild.
you find yourself in the crowd, you start acting like the crowd.
But
isn't
that what Paul might have been alluding to when he said, "Don't be conformed to this world"?
Yes.
I think again, it was Philip says, "Don't be pressed into the mold of this world, but you be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Because if it's just like we can't set in that flowing river and just let the stream take us to wherever it wants to take us. We got to do some rowing, some effort. We're a different creation.
Well, and I love this about the Bible. It says, with God, all things are possible.
Yes.
And I think as he's leading in a direction, like Pastor said, all the experiences led him to know that where God had got him with the ministry, he'll get him in that next phase. And he'll get you guys in the right place.
Can I go back to get some support? Maybe we can do this with a 3D technological whatever.
He wants his Quonset hut.
I want my Quonset hut.
He wants his Quonset hut.
And my wife says it's one of the tackiest things I've ever heard. And I'm going, but can you think of young pastors and young people coming through going, you went from this to this 3,400 seat sanctuary, all because of your faith in God. And the message I'm trying to project is anybody can do this. Just do what God tells you to do, and He can do things that almost seems impossible. I need some. So, am I really off the wall?
I see an overlay here: Quonset hut, and then pull back down the big sanctuary.
They have them set up at California Adventure in the Cars Land. There's Quonset huts, they're part of the decor. Anyway, I'm gonna go there and check.
Anyway,
it out.
I'm dead set. I want to do this, just like a museum, but my wife she can't see it. So I'm going to have to get somebody out there to encourage me. And so I'm not getting it here, I already see. So let's keep going on.
No.
I'll start rambling again.
I just saw an overlay. I'm on the page.
I think my nerd mind was like, but how? How can we do this? Everybody has to put on 3D
And
goggles.
I'm thinking, great idea, just don't involve me.
You glazed out. Yeah.
Audience, you're going to have to give me some encouragement because these guys aren't.
Tyler's already looking it
No,
up.
I
I
already
can see
told
Tyler
I
over
said-
there.
Yeah.
So I think we're about wrapping up,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But the idea, to really, put a cap on this, I think that it's wise to constantly look at your life and examine. That's what it means
Yes.
to examine and say, what is in my life that doesn't fit anymore?
Isn't communion about doing that on a regular
Yes.
basis?
I think it is.
Re-examining. And I think spring cleaning is a good thing too. Once a year to really do an overall look.
And I'd like to challenge anybody out there. If you think God's done with you, don't give up on yourself.
No.
He loves to, Pastor, doesn't he love to resurrect things?
He does. I heard about an 80-some-year-old man. I think it was in the desert somewhere. He retired from ministry, went over there, and a pastor had left a church or whatever. And small people said, "Would you just do it 3 Sundays?" Anyway, long story short, God reassigned him. And last I heard, he had a church over 1,000.
So if you're out there and you're old, just take a chance. Just say,
Take a chance.
God, what can we do next?
That's-
And be
that's-
open to listening to it and move out in
That's
faith.
the story of Leonard in Ventura, Pastor Leonard, who led not Paul Newman. Who's the guy? What's the guy's name?
No, the motorcycle guy.
Steve McQueen.
Steve McQueen. He led
Lord.
Steve McQueen to the Lord. So he's famous.
And you would never think that Leonard would have done that.
Well, he's older, but he was a pastor in Ventura, and he had retired. He was done, and he was just chilling. And they asked him to be in charge of a elderly ministry at the church.
and it turned into a
So he
church.
took it, and then it just blew up.
Yeah, blew up.
Into a church.
I mean, again,
Pretty cool.
and you older people, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty because I know you only have so much energy. And I know you have a lot of health issues. Even if it's something little, don't despise it. Just something little.
Wait a
if you-
second, Pastor. Don't you have a health issue?
Huh?
Don't you have a health issue?
Oh, I got a lot of health issues.
I say, let's don't let him
but
off
I'm feeling
the hook.
good and I'm strong.
Let's don't let him off the hook that
Well,
easy.
and
Well,
really
I've got
that
health issues.
that mentality transcends age, because
Yes.
at any age you can either rest, you can either not challenge yourself, or you can challenge yourself. And no matter how old you are, you got to learn to do
Well, I
that.
want to say too, I have health issues, a lot of challenges, but I feel as perfect today as I did at 45. I mean, I feel strong, I
Pastor,
feel good, I feel great. They're there, but I really don't know they're
I
there.
just didn't want to let him off the hook
I know,
that easy.
yeah. Well, and maybe it has to do too. Maybe I would feel the health issues more
If you didn't
if I wasn't
stay
doing what
busy.
I'm doing.
Yeah.
God's given me divine strength, divine
Think
energy.
about that one. That's wisdom.
Yes. I feel like I'm 45 right now.
brings a whole new meaning to His
Yes.
grace is sufficient.
Yes.
Yes.
So
And it
That's
is.
we're out of here.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.
God bless.
that you